Hello and welcome to another life coaching video. So this video is about how living on a housing estate. Can living on a housing estate have an impact on your upbringing and how you see the world? Yes, it can, because living on a housing estate, you are kind of like in a bubble, and you know, for a long time, me and my brother weren't always allowed off the estate when we were very quite young, and actually play near our block. And at first we lived at the back of the estate, and then we lived around the square of the estate. And I think it does have an impact, because you've got many different families and many different households, and a lot used to happen on the estate. There was always a shed being broken into, or a block of flat, or a flat being broken into, and it kind of became like the norm. So but I was very fearful of living on the ground floor, because the ground floor flats and the flats at the top of the blocks were always targeted, and so it did make you kind of keep you on your toes, because you just never knew if it would be your flat or somebody else's. So in respect, yes, it did. I do think it hasn't made me more fearful. It's kind of made me more of a fighter, because you do have to kind of fight your case when you're living on a housing estate, because you do get domineering children and adults, and those that just want to spoil your fun just for the sake of it. And you had to learn to defend yourself, because if you didn't, you got mullered, sometimes. And I got quite beaten up, but a few times on the estate, or a slap, But then I learned to fight myself, and not that I agree with fighting. It's just that you kind of had to state your territory, really. And we, being somebody in that, I think I am a protector, of people. It's something that has always been within me, and I've always been very protective of things around me, and I was very protective of my estate. I don't like paedophiles or rapists, or those who committed domestic violence, which can include abuse and rape, and and domestic violence did happen in the estate, and it would be over nothing, but I was very protective when living on there, and I think that is why I am still a protector now. I'm very kind of not obsessive, but very protective of my stuff. I am very kind of particular in the fact that I don't like my stuff being touched, unless I'm asked, and so I think that's something that's been within me. I don't even know really if it's something that I learned. I just think it's something that I had in me, because I was with other kids who were like a protector of their siblings and their home, and you kind of had to be that way as well, living on the housing estate, because I think the reason why our flat wasn't targeted was because my dad, even though he could be a bit of a git at times, he was the same. He was very much a protector, and I think that I've got a lot of my dad traits in me, than my mum. I think I've got a lot of traits within me, like my dad. We both loved our music. We loved black and white films. We loved double acts. We just me and my dad are just very much alike. And so as I was saying, yeah. So I think living in a housing estate, you became kind of like very protective and territorial, you know, and I think that's, you know, was embedded in you, you know, living on a housing estate. And that's not looking down on anybody that didn't. It is a total different environment, you know. And then and then there's the thing where, you know, it could be a really good community of people, because, you know, there used to be yearly fetes and bingo nights and you know, kids clubs, and you know, you could even have a birthday party on the estate, because they had a porta cabin that we could hire and use. So it wasn't a terrible place to live. It's just that a lot would go on behind closed doors, and you know, including, you know, child abuse and bullying, because I was bullied on the estate, and that's why I think I was a protector, you know, and I think that's what my role, you know, has been for ages as a kid. I couldn't work out, you know, why I was here a lot of the time, and I think it's because I am very much a protector, you know, and you know, I protected my friends on the estate, you know, and they, you know, vice versa, you know, and we didn't like it, you know, the kids on the estate, of other kids coming off of other estates trying to, you know, spoil our fun or wreck our little park that we used to have on the estate. I don't think it is even used now, but there used to be like a little park with swings and a merry-go-round and a seesaw, and that got shut in the end because it was all concrete. I think they were going to try and rebuild it to make it safer, but I don't think that ever got done, you know, which was a shame. And a lot of things did become closed. You know, they shut the sunken garden, and that became a rubbish tip. And I've been on this estate since those days. I just wanted to have a little look to see how different it was, and it's changed a lot, including the sunken garden. I don't know if it's definitely been looked after, not bad, because that did become a rubbish ground, and so it looks like they've tidied it up a lot, and they've taken away the fencing that used to be around it, you know, so they have really updated the estate. Unfortunately, they put gates on lots of the blocks now, because of, apparently there were like drug abusers who would, you know, go on the blocks and shoot up, you know. What I mean by that is, you know, heroin. And so they've had to put gates on lots of the blocks now, and because also lots of the ground floor flats are for the disabled and elderly. The only problem with that, though, back when I lived on there, was that it kind of made those who burgled, you know, become an easy target, because it was obvious that a disabled person or an elderly person lived there, because they would have like extra handlebars, you know, from their front door to the end of the block, you know, and so they were very targeted. I mean, for me, I would have always had them at the back of the estate rather than at the front, because, you know, it's a long way for a burglar to go to break into someone's houses, and it was mainly the flats that were, you know, easily exposed that became a target, you know. And so I mean, putting gates on them is a good idea. The only problem is that, you know, what happens if someone loses a key, you know, and, you know, unfortunately, you know, it just looks like that there's still kind of not so good people on there, you know, and it's a shame, because, you know, that was not what they were intended for, housing estates. They were to help, you know, families who couldn't afford rent or buying a house, you know, or buying a flat. But yeah, I do think it has an impact on your upbringing, because it could be a rough place to live. I mean, there were worse estates than the one I lived on. Wise City Estate was the most horrendous one. out of the lot of West London, you know, and it was a no-go estate to go on to, because there was worse crimes on that estate than anywhere else, you know. I don't know if they've updated it or improved it, I have no idea, but it was the worst estate out of all of them. And I think, you know, it becomes a place where it can also be a safe haven as well, you know, in one respect. In the fact that when you had good residents, I mean, most of the residents on our block were pretty good, you know. The oldest residents there, you know, was a lady called Doris, and you know, and I used to be friends with her granddaughter Karen, you know, and she was very protective as well of the estate. A lot of people found her to be kind of a busybody, but I could understand where she came from, because she was like one of the eldest residents on that estate from, you know, days of the war, and I suppose, you know, it was her home and didn't want people tarnishing it either, you know, even though there was a spot of trouble between her and another neighbour that lived in that block, sadly, and that kind of, you know, was horrendous. But at the end of the day, you know, you did have to be respectful as well of your neighbours, you know, and you know, because the walls were very thin, so were the floors. I mean, you know, whenever there was a row breaking out, we all joined in, you know, because the walls were that thin that we all would, you know, get involved in neighbours' arguments, because you don't know really if they were shouting at you or the person they were living with half the time. But it's a place where, you know, you could have good times, and you know, when they're like, they always used to have a Christmas party on there for kids, which I went to every year, and you know, so they were good fun, and they would then invite other kids from other people in the estates to come along as well, because I think our one where I lived was one of the biggest of all the Peabody estates. I think it's one of the biggest out of a lot of them, especially in London anyway. And so, you know, it's you know, unless you've been in a housing estate, it's hard to explain, but it's just a very tight niche environment, you know, where, you know, lots of your business wasn't your own, and it spread, and you know, and then people would make assumptions about other neighbours, and so that's a bit that I didn't like, you know. So you know, I mean, I was very protective of, you know, the neighbours, and especially the people who lived there the longest as well. But sometimes you didn't want to know other people's business, you know, and that was a kind of the attitude of living in an estate. You kind of had to, a lot of the time, turn a blind eye to it, you know. And I suppose, you know, and I've never in my life ever called the police. I did, you know, 6 years ago or something, and that was one of the, I don't know whether that was a godsend or the worst thing I ever did, you know, because it did lead to me hitting rock bottom at one point. And so, but you know, and we live in a house in an estate like Peabody. It's very like hush hush, you know, of what you know really can go on in a Peabody estate. And that's one of the reasons why because I wrote a book called The Peabody Years, but I've decided to rewrite it, you know, and I want to write probably 2 books on it, because I would like to write about other, you know, Peabody estates, and because it wasn't just ours, it was others, you know. I mean, in a big housing estate, you expect there to be trouble, you know. It's just the way it is, you know. It's just, you know, I think every country, every, I mean, obviously there's places like Africa where they have, you know, starving children every day, you know. And I've always been led to believe, and I think living in the housing estate as well, has made me in mindset to see that, you know, there's always someone worse off than you, and I totally agree with that, because there were, you know, kids that were, you know, that weren't necessarily bullied, but was treated so badly, you know, in their homes, and you know, and I did become protective, and when they weren't not allowed to go, because sometimes they wouldn't be allowed to, you know, even go back indoors to go to the toilet, I used to say, well, come and use mine, you know, and you know, it has made me very grounded in one respect, because, you know, I do respect the value of things. You know, I did, you know, love my friends like they were family, because it is kind of like one big family in some ways, because there were often people like from other areas, like lots of people on that side were from where I'm from, and where my mum and dad are from, and that's Chelsea, you know, and so you know, it's just a place where, you know, a lot of things went on, and it was very much, you know, you just got on with it, you know, and some things you couldn't talk about, you know, but that's why I want to write that's why I've taken down my book, The Peabody Years, to rewrite it, because it's not just about me, about Peabody, it's about my life during those years of living on Peabody Estate, and talks about, you know, Fulham and Hammersmith and Fulham, you know, Chelsea, most of my weekends, my nan and granddad lived there, you know, and it's just, you know, it's a very, you can either have good days or bad days, you know, there was no like one way, you know, when it comes to Peabody Estates. It's just, you just made the most of what you had, you know, and, you know, I think that's why I am, you know, I like to do things for other people, as much as there are people who, you know, want to go against that. You know, you're always going to have those sorts of people, but you just, you know, being on Peabody, a kid, you know, you had to learn to be a fighter, and you know, stand up to what you believed in, and you know, be your own role model, if you know what I mean. So yeah, so, you know, that's, you know, what I'm going to talk about, because I'm sure I'm not the only kid who's or only person that's lived on a Peabody Estate and know what it's like, and I just want to talk about it, because I think where you live can have an effect on you as a person, especially if you live in a housing estate. So many thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.